So let's start with the CPU. HP Notebook 15 is now powered by the Intel's 11th generation Intel Core i5 processor. This is from the Tiger Lake family CPUs. So this is a brand new CPU architecture and it is supposed to compete with AMD's latest Ryzen mobile processors. Here is a chart showing the key differences between this year's Intel processor versus last year's model. So Intel Core i5 1135G7, it brings the new Tiger Lake microarchitecture and it's built on Intel's refined 10 nanometer process technology. So Intel marketing team is calling this 10 nanometer super fin, and they claim that this process technology, it is bringing the same transistor density as TSMC's 7 nanometer process technology. Let's take a look at the CPU cores. So the turbo frequency, the max frequency that these cores can run has gone up from 3.6 to 4.2 gigahertz. You're also getting 8 meg of cache, up from 6 meg from last year's model. So these changes should boost both the single and the multi-core performance of this laptop. Intel has also bumped the PCI Express revision from 3.0 to 4.0. Now PCIe, it's a high-speed serial expansion bus standard for attaching hardware devices to a computer. So the newer 4.0 version, it is supposed to bring faster data transfer speeds. So on paper guys, these CPU spec bumps, they look really impressive. But how do they translate into real world performance? So let's take a look at the CPU passmark benchmark. The latest 11th generation Intel Core i5 processor has completely smoked last year's model and it scores a whopping 23% performance lead. So I think HP has really picked the best CPU in this low thermal envelope. So whether you're planning to do casuals, internet surfing, or running productivity apps like Microsoft Office, or if you plan to do software development, or if you're just watching YouTube videos, this laptop should chug along nicely. By the way, this improved CPU performance also comes with increased battery life. While last year's model was already delivering over 8 hours of battery life, HP has now managed to bump it up to closer to 9 hours, and they have done it without actually increasing the size of the battery. So I think that's pretty impressive. Okay, now let's talk about the GPU. So HP Notebook 15 is using an integrated Intel Iris Xe graphics. This is a brand new graphics architecture from Intel, and it finally brings Intel at parity with AMD and NVIDIA integrated graphics. Now compared to last year's Intel UHD graphics, which I think were mediocre at best, Intel Xe graphics brings many advancements. Intel has not only bumped the base and the turbo clock frequency, it has also dramatically expanded the number of execution units and shaders in this new GPU architecture. All these improvements bring a significant boost in graphics performance. In iGPU FP32 performance benchmark, Intel Iris Xe graphics was almost 50% faster than last year's Intel UHD graphics. So finally, you will be able to play Fortnite at full HD resolution on this laptop at a respectable frame rate. Now this graphics chip also supports full hardware acceleration of 4K video codecs like H.264, AVC and VP9. So that means if you connect this laptop to an external 4K monitor, you will be able to play all 4K streaming videos in full 4K glory without any stuttering or dropped frames. But guys, at the end of the day, this is still an integrated GPU. So keep your expectations in check. Don't expect NVIDIA or AMD discrete GPU class performance. The biggest and the most important upgrade that HP has made in this laptop, it's in the display quality of the screen. Even though last year's model was sporting a full HD display, I found it to be very underwhelming. This was largely because of the TN panel that HP was using, and these TN panels, they create terrible viewing angles. Now, as long as you are directly looking at the laptop, everything looks fine, but a slight head movement, if you move slightly to the left or right, or if you tilt your head up or down, the screen quality just goes down the drain. Basically what happens is these TN panels, they're not happy with skewed viewing angle. So if you're looking at a skewed angle, the brightness and the contrast will get diminished, the text will look fuzzy, and the pictures and videos, they are going to look completely washed out and dull. Thankfully this year HP has replaced these awful TN panels with glorious IPS panels. Now personally I'm a big fan of IPS panels because they have much wider viewing angle. So when you are looking at the laptop screen, you don't have to position yourself in like almost perfect perpendicular gaze. You can move your head and you can relax. You can even tilt the screen and you can still read the text pictures, colors, everything looks still good. So with this update, now you are getting a 15.6-inch Full HD IPS screen with anti-glare matte coating. The viewing angles are now much better, and the matte coating drastically cuts down on glares and reflections. Now the maximum screen brightness, it's still 220 nits, same as what you got last year. So that's not going to change, which means it's fine for indoor use. But if you guys are planning to use this laptop outdoors in bright sunlight, forget about it. It's not going to work. And unfortunately, most budget laptop screens, in this price range, they all have this problem. So I honestly cannot ding HP for this. A 400 or 500 nit brightness screen, of the size of 15.6 inch, that's going to cost a lot. So you see those screens in Dell XPS 13 or Microsoft Surface laptop, but then those laptops are like thousands of dollars. So overall, I think HP has mitigated most of the problems I had with last year's model, especially the display quality. And with this upgrade, HP Notebook 15, in my opinion, it has become one of the worthy challengers to the reigning champion of budget laptops, and that's my favorite, Acer Aspire 5.